What's happening, everybody? Boy Big Brando, and welcome to another episode of Back to Basics. This one right here is going to be all about graphic design. Now, as a disclaimer, we're not going to be diving deep into how to manipulate stuff and how to actually use the software and all that. That's what YouTube's for. I'm here to break down some simple basic stuff, some of the tools that I think you should start using, and then I'll also try to throw in some of the other programs that are out there. I personally don't use those, but I know a lot of people are on budgets and they can't afford any Adobe software or stuff like that. So let me start out by saying I personally use Adobe. So I use Photoshop and I use Illustrator. A lot of people out there say, why do you use Photoshop to design? That's just what I learned on. I'm decent with Illustrator and I understand the needs for Illustrator when it comes to vectoring stuff and all that, but I've been using Photoshop for years and I know some of the tools that I like to use and I'm comfortable using it, and I get away with designing in Photoshop and then bringing it into Illustrator when I need to vector it and all that stuff. I know it's a little bit of a workaround. There's a lot of graphic designers out there that hate that I do that. There's a lot of different ways to accomplish something. That's what just works for myself. So for the sake of this video, I'm going to be talking about Photoshop. I'll also show a little bit of Illustrator, but I'll show you how I do things in Photoshop, some of the tools that you should do. And the reason why I'm talking about Photoshop is because when you pay for it, it's cheaper than Illustrator. So like I said, there's a lot of people out there on budgets, and I understand that Photoshop is cheaper than Illustrator. So a lot of people opt for buying Photoshop because of the price tag. So let me show you how I use it, and you can make the decision for yourself. All right, check this out. Here's a spam moose to be right here. This is Photoshop 2021. I'm a very hack graphic designer. I never went to school for any of this. I learned this stuff on the fly. The first piece of software I picked up was Photoshop, and that's why I use Photoshop now, is because I really don't want to have to learn a new software. I already invested all this time in learning Photoshop. So that's why I use it, because I'm comfortable with it. You use whatever you're comfortable with. Now, one of the tools you guys hear me talk about all the time when it comes to learning any software is learning the pen tool. What I did when I started to learn Photoshop was I just hovered over all of these little tools on the side. This one's called the rectangular marquee tool. I'll YouTube search what the hell that means, and then a bunch of reviews will come up and a bunch of tutorials come up. Here's the lasso tool. I need to learn how to use that. Go to YouTube, type in Photoshop lasso tool, a bunch of different tutorials come up. That's how you'll learn all these tools. The main ones that I use personally: the text tool, because you're going to type out text and you're going to manipulate it. So the text tool is an easy one to learn. The pen tool is the other one that I use maybe 90% of the time. This is how I redraw everything that I do, is with the pen tool. I'm pretty sure you could do it with Illustrator also, but like I said, I learned it on Photoshop. We're talking about Photoshop. So here's a spam musubi that I did for a hat. The whole thing was drawn with the pen tool. And let me show you exactly how I did it. So this whole thing, if I erased it all, came up from this. This is a picture of my GoPro case. Here's the GoPro case right here. This is a picture that I took of the GoPro case with my phone. I uploaded it to Photoshop and it's here. Don't believe me? Check it out. See? I added the spam, I added the nori. Everything is smooth, right? So if we delete that, see how that works? I drew this with the pen tool. Let me show you how that works. So I select the pen tool. I adjust my brush. So my brush size is going to be at 10. You want to click on your brush, go to the brush size, move it to 10. You can do 12, 15, whatever size. I just chose 10. Go back down to the pen tool. I'll show you why that's important later. Now I'm on the pen tool. You're going to click once. Boom. It's going to drop this little anchor right there. Hopefully you could see that, but there's a little blue anchor right there. Come all the way down. Click it again. Boom. Another anchor, but now there's a line attached to it. So now we have a little curve. I'm going to drop an anchor, keep it held, and then I'm just going to pull it down, and it's going to create a curve for me. This is going to give me a rounded edge. Now I'm using a Mac, so you're going to hold down Option, click on this little anchor, and then bring it down for another straight line. And then here comes another rounded corner. I'm going to keep it held down, drag out that anchor, give me a round corner. Boom. And I'm just going to go all the way around and show you how this was done. Another round corner, hold it down, drag out that anchor. Click option, another straight line, round corner, drag it up, option, round corner, option, round corner. All right, now I'm on a Mac, so I'm gonna hold down Control, click the mouse. It's gonna bring up this right here. If you're on a PC, I think you just right click it. You have fill path and stroke path. Fill path is gonna fill in this whole section right here with whatever color you have selected over there. We don't need fill path, we're not filling it in, we just want the outline. The outline is gonna be stroke path. Select stroke path, it's gonna bring up the tool. We selected brush, remember we adjusted the brush size early on. So it's gonna give me the brush size of 10. Click OK, boom. Now we have the outline done. Delete the path. Now we have an outline. That's all it is. If you want to redraw anything, learning the pen tool is going to be very, very easy for you. All you got to do is practice drawing circles with it. All you got to do is just practice using it. Watch a bunch of videos. I have videos on my channel showing where I redraw a hamburger, a hand-drawn hamburger. Go over that. I'll show you exactly how to do it. But this is just for everybody that was asking how I do graphic design or how I create graphics. I do it as easy as possible for myself. And if this isn't easy by taking a picture of this GoPro thing to make it look like this spam used to be, pretty crazy, right? So now you're probably like, all right, now that you did that, that's cool, but how do you send it to print? How do you get it going? The easy part is this right here can be opened up in Illustrator. So all you do is merge all of these layers together and basically copy and paste it. So you're gonna merge all this together, copy, and then come into Illustrator and then paste. Once you select paste, all you have to do is live trace this thing and expand it. And that's all you got to do. And this is now vectored. It's ready to go. You could send it to the print shop. You could send it to a digitizer. You could send it to get transfers made. But now your Photoshop file is now vectored because you didn't draw it as a vector file. You drew it as a rastered file in Photoshop. But now you just vectored it in Illustrator using live trace. I got videos on my channel showing that same exact process also. Hopefully this helps somebody out. Learn the pen tool. That's the best advice I could give anybody, is learning the pen tool to learn how to redraw stuff in Photoshop, Illustrator, or whatever program that you use. All right, I hope that little brief rundown helps somebody out there. If you wanted to learn a software, pick one, learn it, and then you don't have to learn anything else after that. Like for myself, I learned how to use Photoshop early on before I knew anything about it, Illustrator or any other type of program. I learned Photoshop and then I just stuck with it because it'll be pretty draining if I had to learn a whole nother software. And it's like, for what? Pick one, learn it, you're good to go. Now, there's probably gonna be people out there that are like, man, I can't afford Photoshop or Illustrator. There are free options that are like these other third-party type of softwares out there. And one of them is called GIMP, G-I-M-P, and I think the other one is called Inkscape. I don't know nothing about these. I hear people talk about them in my Facebook group, so that's why I'm bringing it to you guys. One of them is an equivalent to Photoshop and the other one is an equivalent to Illustrator. So if you're looking for some sort of free type of editing software or design software, you could try those out. Like I said, I know nothing about those. I've never used them. I've never looked at them. I never looked into them. I have no idea about any of them. But I get that question a lot and it's like, I can't afford Photoshop or Illustrator. Is there anything else I could use? There's the solution. You could try those out if you wanted to. It's up to you. Now also, a lot of people have vinyl cutters and their vinyl cutters come with editing software. So that software that comes with your vinyl cutter is a proprietary software for that cutter. It's almost like a print driver, right? When you buy a new printer, you got to download the drivers so your computer can talk to the printer. Same exact concept here, but now you have editing software where you could actually design stuff in it and send it to your cutter and cut it out. An issue that a lot of people have been having was they'll save those files, they'll edit and they'll design all in their cutting software, like Silhouette Studio or whatever Cricut has, whatever it is, they'll design in there. And then they're like, well, how do I save this file so I could get transfers made? You got to remember, if it saves as a proprietary file, chances are that a transfer company is going to have that same exact software to open that up. So a lot of these transfer companies and embroidery companies and screen print shops and basically anybody in the print industry will be using Adobe products because that's an industry standard. So if you send them an Illustrator file, they can open it up in Illustrator on their end. If you send them a Photoshop file, they can open it up in Photoshop on their end because Adobe is just, like I said, an industry standard. But if you have Cricut software and you're trying to save your Cricut file and then send it to get transfers made, that print shop doesn't own a Cricut, so they can't open those files and then it's rendered useless. So whenever you're ordering transfers, you got to make sure that you send them a file type that you can save your designs as, that they can actually open on their end. Now, another thing is a lot of these transfer companies, a lot of embroidery shops, they all want files to be vector files. Vector files are straight lined shapes. What I mean by this is there's going to be the crispiest, cleanest print that you can get with a vector file. You could scale it up, you could scale it down. It'll never get blurry, it'll never rasterize. A raster file is something that Photoshop puts out. That's a bunch of little dots that creates your design. So the bigger you blow it up, the edges get really fuzzy, the edges get really, really blurry. That makes for a horrible print. So print shops, embroidery shops, screen print shops, transfer shops, all of these guys require vector files. How do you vector stuff? With software like Illustrator. Because you gotta remember, you want the cleanest print possible. The transfer company wants to give you the cleanest print possible. But if you give them a shitty file, you're gonna get a shitty print. You see what I'm saying? So make sure you give these guys exactly what they want. They're not trying to be hard. They want your business. They're not trying to be assholes about it. But if they printed some of these really low-res JPEG files that you guys send them, and they print that and you get back this really crappy ass image, you're gonna get mad at them. And all they did was click send, click print. That's all they did. They don't touch your files when you send them to a transfer company. All they do is print out exactly what you send. So when you see print ready files, that means you send them a file that they can send straight to the printer, no questions asked. Because whatever you send them is what they're gonna print. So remember, sending them 72 DPI JPEGs. These are the standard images. When you like take something off of Google, it's gonna be 72 DPI, which is a very low DPI image. And if you try to blow it up, like scale it up so it fits your 12 by 12 transfer, it's gonna look blurry and shitty. To avoid having a shitty looking print, you want 300 DPI and you want a vector file. The vector file is gonna be crucial for you. Let's say you have Photoshop and you're only creating raster files and you want to send that to the print shop. Some of these transfer companies will take your Photoshop file. Some of them don't. And if you're in this situation and you don't have Illustrator and you don't know how to vector your stuff, there are some vendors out there that do strictly vectoring of your images. So just Google vector service, vector designs. There's a lot of designers that'll pop up. You send them your Photoshop file, they'll vector it for you for a fee, send it back to you, you send that off to the printer. You can operate that way too, all right? Hopefully this helps somebody out there. Like I said, I'm sorry that I didn't go like balls deep into designing and all that stuff. I use Photoshop, I use Illustrator. This is a question I get all the time. Hey, what design software do you use? What are you using to design? That's what I do. I basically just showed you. I'll draw 90% of the things that I do in Photoshop. Take it out of Photoshop, put it in Illustrator and vector it. I just don't have the time and I don't have the energy to start learning all the ins and outs of Illustrator. I've already done it with Photoshop. This is working for me. This is how I get by right now. There's gonna be a lot of graphic designers in there saying, don't use Photoshop, you should just use Illustrator, blah, blah, blah. That's cool. This shit right here works for me. I know I'm doing a lot of extra steps. This is my own process. This is how I operate. If you have a better, efficient way of operating, good for you. All right, hopefully you guys are enjoying this series. I'm now realizing by all the questions that I'm getting, I'm gonna have to do a part 2 of Back to Basics, where we get a little bit deeper into certain categories and stuff, because I'm seeing a lot of questions. So I'll keep that in the back of my mind to create a new playlist of Back to Basics part 2 in the near future. If you got any questions, make sure you leave it in the comments right now. Oh, and before I get out of here, here's that Spam Musubi on a hat. Stitched on by me, but Like I said, it went from this GoPro case to putting it into Photoshop, to using the pen tool to draw the whole thing, put it into Illustrator, vectored it, got it digitized, stitched it onto this hat. It went onto this hat, it went onto a bunch of dad hats. I don't wear those, but there it is right there. Hopefully it's in focus. So like I said, this is my process, this is how it works. Easy call for myself. Follow me on Instagram, Big Brando TV. Catch you guys on the next one, man. Yep.